Well, good Tuesday evening, everyone. Welcome to Bowling with the Pfeff. I'm Andrew Pfeffer, excited to have a new week on the show, a platform to share your unique bowling story, ask and answer questions, talk about issues in the game, and it's all live on our YouTube channel. Coming to you after, I guess, a little hiatus here. We had some connection problems last week and was hoping to get you in episode 8 about the Chippewa Valley match games, which is coming up at Wagner's Lanes in Eau Claire this weekend, January 2nd and 3rd, 2021. If you're interested in bowling in that event and don't know where to turn or looking for some more info about it, shoot me a note, bowlingwiththepfeff@yahoo.com. I can get you in contact with the folks who are running that tournament. It's always a great time and competitive, and they're getting lots of interest this year. So again, if you're interested, don't delay. Let me know, and I can make that connection for you. Let's move on to our first frame. We're going to talk about bowling memories tonight. And, you know, when it comes to bowling memories, tournament wins, honor scores, league nights, they all may come to mind, but it's awfully tough to compare to meeting a big goal in college collectively with a great bunch of teammates. Now, I've told you several times on this show that I have had some experience bowling in college. I bowled a year for UW-Eau Claire and 2 for UW-Milwaukee, winning tournaments, great memories for me, especially the Wisconsin Collegiate Bowling Championship that our team captured in the 99-2000 season, topped the list for me. So whether you bowled in college or not, tell me, what was your favorite bowling memory? Let us know in the chat, or if you're watching on replay, shoot a comment on this page. We'd love to hear about your favorite bowling memories, be it college, amateur ranks, just goofing around, anything. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. So speaking of college, our beer frame guest tonight is Shawn Wochner, the head coach from UW-Whitewater. He is joining us from Carpentersville, Illinois. How are you doing tonight, Shawn?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on. Very excited.
Hey, thanks for being here. So I'm going to have to start, with our first frame question. What is your favorite bowling memory? And you've got a lot of them, I'm sure.
So I would say, as a competitor, my favorite memory would have to be winning the 2001 Intercollegiate Team Championships. I went to Western Illinois for my undergrad, and winning that event as a senior, I think was pretty special.
Yeah, and a great way to close out a college career. How do your individual accomplishments compare to the team accomplishments that you've had over the course of your bowling career?
To me, team bowling is the epitome. It is the be-all of the sport. I was never and have never been an amazing individual player. I won some events as a youth, compete, in events as an adult up in, either it be in Kenosha or city tournament, state and nationals. But I've always focused more on the team events. My USBC Open Championships average is higher in the team event than it is in doubles or singles. So again, for me, it's been more about the team, which is why I think I've been such a good fit into the coaching realm, just because of my successes and in where I've been able to find it. I think I've lost you, so I don't know if I'm still on here or not. But I would say an individual accomplishment that I've had that I would say was the most prestigious of individual events or individual recognition would be the 1997, which dates way back when, but the National Youth Leader of the Year award, which is awarded to one male, one female for for service to the sport of bowling as a youth leader. So that is something that on the individual side that I've also had some great pride in, as that did have an opportunity for me to have some doors open, both into the college world, but also into tournament management, into coaching, and some other aspects. And it looks like we have you back. I've been rambling. So
that's great. No, I was really afraid that everything went out, and here we are. But way to carry the ship forward. No, that's great.
I saw the live button on. I saw the live, so I just kept going.
That's the first rule of TV. When the red light's on, just keep going, even if you're tap dancing or whatever.
Right.
I've got to ask you, what does it take to be a successful college coach? I mean, you've had a decade plus of just success after success. What's going on behind the scenes that makes that happen that maybe people don't see?
The first thing is great players. Because for me, like at Whitewater, I'm not a full-time coach. I have another full-time job, and then still do everything else that a full-time coach does. So I've got great assistant coaches. I've got great student athletes that, again, kind of follow directive and do the things that they're asked to do. They go above and beyond most of the time. When it comes to preparing for events, preparing academically, like we just finished our fall semester, we have our highest cumulative team GPA that we've had in my 11 years now at Whitewater. That GPA was 3.21, 3.22, somewhere in that range. So for 24 guys, certainly extremely proud of that accomplishment for them. So not only are they excelling in the classroom, but also on that piece. I would also say communication is vital. We use an app called GroupMe, which we're able to communicate quickly, frequently with each other. Everybody tells me I have stellar organization and run a very tight ship. So that has really helped over the years. And then honestly, I would have to give kudos to my wife and daughter to allow me to be gone so much, either be it practice or competition. They're going to be excited to see me gone this spring. I've been home since March 12th, leaving literally really to go to the chiropractor, and that's about it. So they're going to be excited that I'm gone every weekend, starting mid-January for a while. They can kind of get back to their own routines. But again, I couldn't do what I'm doing without that strong support team.
Yeah, absolutely. You had mentioned mid-January, you've got a Great Lakes Conference event coming up in Ashwaubenon during the last weekend of January. How do you prepare your team for that and this, kind of new season that we have coming up here, despite the limits and the changes that the pandemic has kind of forced upon all of us?
Yeah, the fall was crazy. We had no collegiate competition. They announced, I want to say early July, that the season would be pushed back to starting in January. So with no team competition this fall, and then with the COVID restrictions on campus, we were limited into what we could and could not do on campus as well. So we actually went down to 2 days of practice. We started with only being allowed to have 9 people in the bowling center at a time. Thankfully, that increased about midway through the semester, so we were able to go from 3 groups down to 2 groups, which allowed, again, me with my commute a little bit easier time, but also for the guys to have more time working with each other. So they spend a lot of time this fall working, which I'm super excited about because we're going to be young this year. I'm only returning 3 from my varsity team, or what would have been, I guess, my varsity team last spring, because again, we didn't have postseason in the spring either. So this fall, I was really trying to hone in on some of the aspects that make us successful in an event like the Great Lakes Bowling Conference or any collegiate event for that matter, which is getting left. I think is the biggest key for us, as we want to keep ourselves in as much fresh head oil as possible, and then spare shooting. Those are the two big things that we worked on this fall. Now we're going to come back and we're going to have some virtual team meetings here over the next couple of weeks before we come back to school, which if any of the guys are watching, that's news to them. Because I haven't even announced our competitive roster yet, because I was waiting for grades to come in with the nuance of the fall semester. And we have more than 24 guys that came to tryouts this year. So we kept all the guys throughout the entire fall semester. I said that I would make a determination once I got fall grades. So I'll be making that announcement to the team tomorrow. And then we'll start next week with at least weekly virtual meetings to kind of, again, get into some more of the mental game stuff. We're going to work on time management because never before have we traveled 7 out of 8 weekends. But once actually 7 out of 9. So once we get started in January, we are nonstop until the end of March. And then we have 2 weekends in April and the first week of May, should we make ITCs. So this spring semester is going to fly by. So we're going to work a lot on time management. But we get back to campus actually the Tuesday before our first conference tournament. So again, we're going to be giving the guys directives between next week and the time they come back to start putting time back in, if they're not already, into spare shooting, targeting, things like that. So that way when we do come back in January, we're in as close to mid-season form as we can be. So.
Wow. Yeah. Hey, we never, shy away from breaking news on this program. So glad to have that content there. Tell me, do you think you can accomplish all that you would accomplish in a physical meeting, in an in-person meeting, virtually, since that's kind of what you're going to be left with, let's face it, leading up to when kids come back to campus?
We had a couple of virtual meetings in the fall. Do I think we can accomplish everything? No, because there are some things where, again, really seeing reaction, I think, is important, and seeing body language and seeing those nonverbal cues. Communication was my major in my undergrad, so those are things that I always tend to hone in on. And they truly tell a story of if somebody is having that aha moment in their head, or if you can see them start to drift and wander, that you can really tell that they're tuning you out. That's much more difficult to do in a virtual world. But again, given the nuance of this season, we're going to have to do what we have to do, because again, we're going to hit the ground running week 1 of the spring semester, and we've got a hot streak in the GLBC that it's my intent, as long as I'm at Whitewater, to not lose a conference tournament. and again, it's going to be tough to do because there's some teams that are building. You mentioned your alma mater, UW-Milwaukee. They've been a strong competitor here the last few years. There's a new school to our conference. I think they joined last year or the year before, but Rock Valley Community College out of Rockford, Illinois, which is only about 45 minutes from campus. Those two programs have really increased their talent levels the last couple of years. So when in years past, I've maybe only taken 3 or 4 guys that might be traditional varsity, and then kind of throw in some JV guys to get some varsity experience. I'm not going to be able to do that moving forward, because the teams in conference are getting stronger and pushing us more than they have in years past. So again, we're going to do the same things that we've done every other year. In terms of preparing, it's just going to look a little bit different these next couple of weeks than what it might have normally. Because normally we would have had a competition before the Great Lakes January event. So we're excited to start our season in conference, which we do normally in the fall as well. We always start the last week of September with a Great Lakes Conference event before the big Tier 1 in Wauwatosa, which I'm sure you remember from your college days.
Yeah.
But so we're just going to start the spring this year with a Great Lakes Bowling Conference. So we're excited to start it in that arena.
Sure. I noticed that in this lineup of teams that's in the Great Lakes Bowling Conference, you've got Western Illinois in there. Is it strange to go
Yes.
up against? Is it strange to go up against your old school?
You know what? Honestly, it is for two reasons. Number one, 2 years ago they actually beat us in the bracket, which again was good and bad for me, right? Like it stunk for my team, but it was really cool to see my alma mater again kind of have some success. But also one of my college teammates that I bowled all 4 years with is now coaching the team. So it's really cool to see Pete giving back to Western, giving back to college bowling. He was an All-American 2 years. So again, it's really cool to see him in that arena giving back as well. So and actually I've got now 2 other teammates, because Derek Sapp, who I bowled with 2 years, and then he was on the team in 2002 when they won as well. He's now coaching at Culver Stockton in Iowa. So again, there's more of us that are getting into this coaching world that have collegiate experience.
Sure. Are there differences between the Wisconsin Collegiate Bowling Conference and the Great Lakes Conference, or is the latter just a different name for the former? I mean, I remember it all just being individual team games. There was no Baker. There were no real individual events that had a winner and loser. It was all just building up to the championship at the end of the season, and whoever had accumulated the most points won. It sounds like it's different now.
It is. First of all, we did have a name change about 2 years ago because we started to get, as you can see on that list, schools from Iowa, Illinois. We've always had schools since I've been around from Minnesota. So we're starting to expand beyond just the UW schools. So we wanted to change the name to be more reflective of all of the programs in conference. So that's one change since your time. It's just a name change. And then the other thing, the year before I started, they went to being individual tournaments. And I think that probably had to do with how teams were ranked and seeded into sectionals. So we went to having, instead of only having the conference championship earn points for ranking purposes, but still have 4 tournaments, the teams decided to give individual points to each of the 4 conference events. And then we still crown based on your total points accumulated through each of the 4 conference events. We do still name a conference regular season champion, which is purely based on points. Now, I will tell you, my first year, 2010-11, there was actually a tie for on the men's side with us and UW-Milwaukee for a conference championship. I assume that had never happened, so we actually did a 2-game Baker match. Total pinfall determined the winner. I will tell you, almost every team stayed and watched, and for Whitewater, it felt like we were in a third world country competing where everybody was booing us. Like everybody was cheering for Milwaukee, right? So it's that feeling of being Chicago Bears in Green Bay, right? Like it's the whole world is stacked against you, right? So we actually decided based on that experience that why not do this every year? So what we do now is we actually take the top 8 men's teams based on points. We still name the regular season champion, but then we take the top 8 teams into a bracket, which gives these teams some more experience competing in the bracket format. And it allows, again, as you can kind of see on the conference history, Whitewater hasn't won the bracket every year. I can tell you since 2011, since tying and then losing that final, we have won the regular point season title every year, but we've only won 5 of the last 10 actual brackets. So it's been a cool experience, and I think the teams in conference really like having the bracket championship, because again, it gives more teams an opportunity to win the conference title. Because that year, Western was the 8th seed. They actually beat us in the first round. So again, that would have never happened if we did conference the way it was when you were bowling. So again, we're trying to keep conference current with college bowling, right? And postseason is now all Bakers, both club national championships, which some of our teams compete in, and the ITCs. It's all bracket play. So this gives our teams a little bit more exposure to that in the regular season.
Sure. And, if any of you out there have never bowled a Baker game, it's a different animal. It really is. Do you guys prepare for those types of events that have Baker games in the competition differently than you do others? Or is the event with no Baker matches just kind of a dinosaur at this point?
So almost every tournament has Baker somewhere in it. Most of our tournaments will do 5 or 6 team games on Saturday, and then Sunday come back and do somewhere between 12 and 20 Baker games. So most of our tournaments do encompass both types of competition. I will tell you, in our team practices, we rarely, and actually I can count on one hand in my 10 years, the number of times we bowled a 5-person team game in practice. However, I would need, I can't begin to tell you how many sets of hands and feet to count the number of Baker games we throw during a collegiate season. Again, because one of the things I'm looking for is who feeds off of each other, right? Like trying to find that ideal lineup, because people communicate differently, and knowing who can communicate best with each individual, I think has again kind of been a help to us in that success category, because that's something that I watch and I'm involved in, is knowing how player A might talk to player B. So if they've got a really good connection and they're both bowling okay, I want to keep them next to each other in the lineup because they feed off of each other, right? So kind of learning each player's communication style determines that Baker lineup. And Baker's, as you said, there's nothing else like it, right? You're throwing 2 frames of a game. So for those of you listening that may not know, you have your 5-player lineup, and then bowler 1 is going to bowl the first frame and the 6th frame. Bowler 2 bowls the 2nd and 7th frame, and so on down to the 5th player who bowls the 5th and 10th frame. You can change your lineup after each game, but you can't do it within a game. So it makes it a little bit challenging having to figure out, who's the hot hand at the moment. I will tell you, usually in Bakers, we change lineups a lot. Where in team games, we don't usually change our lineup at all, unless a player comes in and out, right? We don't usually always put the hot hand at the bottom. We may put the hot hand in leadoff in a team game to help line people up. Where in Baker, it's very different. You want to keep the hottest hands, in that 3, 4, 5 position, so you're finishing 8, 9, and 10 really strong. So we do practice Baker a lot in practice, because again, I'm always rotating guys, trying to move lineups around, just trying to see, again, who plays off of each other well, who communicates with that person before them or that person after them really well.
Yeah. Obviously, you didn't come to Whitewater off the street. You've got a bowling story that dates back years. How did you get started in the sport of bowling? When and where did that happen, and what were the circumstances behind it?
So bowling in general, I come from a bowling family. Both of my parents bowled. So I was a kid in a car seat going to Friday night Saturday night leagues with my parents. My mom bowled it was either a Tuesday or a Wednesday daytime league. So I would go to the daycare at the bowling center when my mom bowled during the day. So for me, it's been something I've grown up doing. I started bowling league at the age of 5. It's the one sport that I did extremely consistently, and really, truly, the only one I did super competitively. Because again, for me, I was not super athletic. I was always awkwardly big, but found success very early in bowling, because again, it's one of those sports that it doesn't matter your capability, your size, your age. It doesn't matter. Anyone can find success if you're willing to work. So for me, it was kind of just going through the process, right? The player development pipeline, as I call it. I did not have high school bowling, so I turned to just bowling scholarship events. And before we went on air, we were kind of talking about, one of your former friends, or one of your friends, Ed Smaglick. I remember bowling with him at Red Carpet up in Wisconsin, right? The big tournament that they used to hold up there in Milwaukee. Like, again, those are events that I would travel to in order to compete. We did tours in Illinois, in Iowa. Again, and then it just kind of went on from there into college. Believe it or not, Western Illinois wasn't my first choice. I looked at a couple of other schools. One, like Nebraska, was just too big for me. Central Missouri was way too small. So for me, Western was kind of that middle ground. And it's where I went. It's where I was that kid that made the decision based on playtime, which is ironic because that's what I tell students not to do today. Even though for me that process played out, there's just much more, or many more powerhouses today than there were when I went to school.
Sure.
But went through the college ranks, sure. and again had a really, really good experience. Finished on a high note, and then instantly started running a collegiate event. I run the Leatherneck Classic. This year this will tell how long it's been since I graduated, but this year will be the 20th anniversary of that event. So, and through that, I met Dale Lehman, who is now a coach at Calumet, but he was the head coach at Robert Morris in Chicago at the time. And that year I knew I had just gotten married. I knew I was going to be moving up to the Chicago area, which is where my wife is from. And I just happened to talk to Dale at the tournament and said, hey, I'm moving to Chicago. If there's any opportunities, I would love to get into coaching. And I had talked to Dale a couple of years prior to that conversation, just through running the event. And he's like, here's my card, reach out when you get to Chicago and we'll see where we are. Well, got to Chicago and reached out to him right away. And he said, lo and behold, we're starting a men's program. We would love to have your experience and, as a collegiate player, and then come in and help us launch this men's program. So I came in as an assistant coached there for 3 years. And it's actually through that I actually landed at Whitewater. Had I not coached at Robert Morris, I would not be at Whitewater today. There's a student athlete that started the first year that I was at Robert Morris. His name's Mike Dolan. I don't know if you know Mike or not, but he was at Robert Morris the first year I was there, transferred to Whitewater for his sophomore year. He had to sit out a year. And so that third year that I was at Robert Morris, he is now competing at Whitewater. They had a player coach that year in Kiefer Sullivan. And I will never forget it, but Chris Bardole, who was a player at Robert Morris, came out to the suburbs and we bowled a midnight sweeper here in Carpentersville, actually. And then Chris stayed at my house because we got done at like 2 or 3 in the morning. And he didn't want to drive back to the city, so we just went back to my house. Got up on Sunday and we're watching the PBA tour. And it's mid-October. Both Kiefer and Mike both start messaging me on Facebook and saying, hey, you should come coach us at Whitewater. And I blew it off. I'm like, I'm not moving. Like, it's just not going to happen. It continued to persist, they would see me at tournaments, come and talk. Like Kiefer came and introduced himself, and they were persistent. I kind of kept pushing it off because stupid me didn't look at a map and see just how close Whitewater was to the border. I'm thinking here it is like 4 or 5 hours away. Like I had to move to Green Bay area, or even in Milwaukee. And finally, over Christmas break, I agreed to go meet Kiefer, and we actually met in Lake Geneva. We went to Gino Z, so it's a little bit of Chicago versus meets a little bit of Wisconsin. We had some pizza on the lake, and I told him at that point, like, hey, let's continue some conversation. And in February, actually at the Hoosier Classic, I went back and met Kiefer one more time on campus. I committed to coaching them actually at the Hoosier Classic that year in February of 2010, and then started there in that spring. So that's my bowling story and how I got to where I am today. So it truly all started with just going to college to bowl, which is how I got to run the tournament, which is how I got to meet a college coach and start coaching, and how I landed where I am today.
Okay. So when you start at Western Illinois, I'm sitting in a computer lab at UW-Eau Claire, Netscape Navigator, check, searching bowling and things like that. And I pull up an article about a sophomore from Nebraska bowling the first sanctioned 900 series ever. And this is such a big thing, and it was huge because people had bowled 900 before, but they had never been sanctioned. Now a kid named Jeremy Sonnenfeld, who had done it at a tournament on different pairs, if I'm not mistaken, did it. And the next thing you know, he's in Western Illinois. Was there something going on there that was kind of bubbling to the surface around the time that you got there or were in your second or third year?
So Jeremy transferred my sophomore year. He had actually sat out my freshman year. We had a coaching change between my freshman and sophomore year. The program was going through transition. The coach that actually had recruited me retired. Jeff Stockton retired. So they just threw in a warm body my freshman year, and he ended up leaving that year. So we recruited a coach, somebody we knew from the local area, and Randy had somehow known Jeremy, and the girl Jeremy was dating at the time was from Chicago area. She actually went to Kansas. She wanted to go closer to home, and so where one significant other goes, the other tends to follow. And Western Illinois had a decent women's team at that time as well. So they kind of just landed at Western, which truly was the spark that really made us jump in the rankings. And we actually won the title my sophomore year. I was not on the roster for that year, but that year, Jeremy's first year with us, we won the national title. We went my freshman year from really not being able to finish in the top half of a field to winning the ITC championship the following year, which we had two transfers come in, Jeremy and then Eric Schaefer, who transferred from Akron, I believe, but Ohio, certainly. Both of them transferred in, and then we had some other guys that kind of came in at that time that were in the program. And literally we won in 99, actually beating Nebraska on TV. The next year we finished 5th. So that year was kind of a dismal year, but then we went back to back my senior year in 2001, and then they won again in 2002. But so Jeremy was there with us for 2 years because he had 2 years with Nebraska.
Okay. So let's again fast forward to where you left off. You get to Whitewater. You're going to be the head guy. What do you take with you from those early days at Western, from Robert Morris, that you then apply at Whitewater, which was not a rebuilding program? It was a program that had tons of success in the decades before you got there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. John Shallow had just graduated a full year before I had come to Whitewater. Tyler Schmitz was there, Trevor Roosh, Mike Dolan was there, Jared Gears. They had a ton of talent, which is what attracted me to come into that program. They just lacked an adult coaching figure. Kiefer was doing all that he could, but he was also one of them, right? And it's really hard when you're 18, 19, 20, 21 to fully respect and trust another 18, 19, 20-year-old. So I felt coming in that again, taking the lessons that I had learned from helping start a program from scratch, right, which we did at Robert Morris on the men's side, but then also coupling that with everything that I learned over my 4 years at Western Illinois, going from, again, not being able to finish in the top half of the field to how just a coaching change can completely affect the recruiting, the ability to draw players, the ability to find and well, first of all, define success, right? Like what is that mean to your program? Because as you mentioned, like one of your highlights or your highlight from college was winning the Wisconsin Conference, right? So we had to start by defining what success even meant. So these are the things that I've taken in. One thing that I did, and kind of taking from my time at Western, truly was building personal relationships with the guys, really trying to get to know them beyond just being a bowler, right? Because they're truly not coming to bowl at Whitewater just for the bowling piece, or at least they shouldn't be, right? Whitewater's got a very strong academic reputation. And I always tell recruits and players that college bowling is only 4 years of your life, but your degree is forever. So again, trying to find that right fit of both is important. But throughout that courting process, and once you're in the program, really trying to build that trust and have that personal relationship with folks, it is super important. And I think that has helped in building the success of the program. Is my guys feel that they can trust me and come to me with something, if it's academic related, if it's a personal issue with a girlfriend or a significant other or whatever it might be, to issues with bowling, right? So, or with a teammate. So because we've got that rapport, which again, my coach knew everything about us, and I can tell you more than I should probably know about the guys in the program. Because we do have a close connection. But again, I think that has helped develop some of that trust and respect that we have, and that has truly helped in being successful. I will say from the Robert Morris side, one of the biggest things that I took away from Dale Lehman is the organization, like how to run a structured program. Because when I was at Western, again, our coach had another full-time job. So he, again, wasn't always at the beck and call that we needed, like Dale was. Like Dale's job was coaching. So I got to see some of that, what a full-time head coach truly does, in terms of organizing practices, travel, right? Like booking hotels and dinners, doing a travel itinerary. When I was in college, we never had a travel itinerary. Our parents, like, again, hey, Mom, I'm going to Wauwatosa this weekend. I think we start at 10 a.m., and of course the internet wasn't what it is today either, where you can more readily find this type of information. But I send all of my parents hotel information for every hotel we're at, all of our tournament itineraries, very detailed timeline of things that we're doing. If we're making dinner reservations, I include parents. So these are some of the structural things I think that I took from Robert Morris, which again has helped in developing our practice regiments and travel routines, the things that we do on the road. We always try to incorporate something fun into our travel weekends, which is something Robert Morris did. I remember when I was coaching, we were in Chattanooga for sectionals. We went through a cave, a cavern, as part of a tour thing. So every year we try to find something in the cities we go to do other than bowling, right? So like when we're in Milwaukee, we always go to Comedy Sports, which is an improv comedy show. When we start our season in Minneapolis for the conference, I don't go, but I send the guys to the Mall of America. We stay about 2 miles from the mall. When you've been there, you've seen it, you're good. The guys love to go. They all come back with bags, and then we're trying to figure out how we're going to stuff everything in the car on the way home. Other events, like we've had tournaments in Oshkosh for like either be the Titan or a conference. We always go to the bar. Not that the players drink, but they have indoor sand volleyball. It's amazing to let the guys, like they've got a huge banquet room where we have all 24 of our players, our coaches, and all of the parents that travel. We sit down, have dinner together, and then we all go play sand volleyball. And it's a riot, more so to see the parents jump out and the dads try to be superheroes and start diving in the sand and whatnot. But again, we always try to incorporate something fun. We normally go out east to Allentown, Pennsylvania, which we should be there now, between Christmas and New Year's. So we alternate every year, spending a day in New York City or spending the day in Philadelphia. So just kind of, we tend to rotate, but just to give the guys an experience that they wouldn't normally have. Because again, bowling is great, right? But it's those memories that you truly take away. So we try to give those here at Whitewater.
Beats the tar out of binging the Cobra Kai series on Netflix, doesn't it?
I did that this week, yes.
It's a good show. I mean, it's just not the same as traveling across the country. You mentioned recruiting.
Correct.
And you have to do some recruiting, I would imagine. I don't know how much you do compared to whoever's on your staff. In other sports, the adage is, well, you're recruiting mom or you're recruiting the parents. Well, you're coming in with, we're recruiting bowling here, and we can't give you a full scholarship. So how is that done? And now with COVID, I guess that adds another challenge into the recruiting process.
So there's a lot in that one little question that you asked. First of all, I will tell you, yes, parents are part of the process. Because parents wear our gear. The last thing I want is that complaining mom or that complaining dad, the dad that's going to try to coach from the back. I make it very clear that this is like football, right? And I've even said this to folks at Whitewater. I run this program as if I'm the football coach at Whitewater, right? So I don't deal with mom and dad. Like your kid's an adult, they're 18. So when you're watching a football game, you may have coached your kid all, perhaps maybe even in high school. When they go to college, it's not like you're running down on the football field saying, hey, Johnny, come here, I got to tell you something. Nor is Johnny running up into the bleachers to go talk to you, right? So we kind of have that same philosophy here, that, again, your kid will go say hi, but then they're right back down with us. We make changes. We are doing things differently as we play lanes together as a team. And I'm willing to sacrifice one to benefit four, but I'm not going to sacrifice four to benefit one. So your kid may be asked to play in an area that is not their comfort zone. And so they're not going to shoot 240, but we may not need 240. Like 190-2-0 might be a really good game based on the scoring pace, right? So, or we may have a different ball in Johnny's hand because, again, it stays with the realm of what the other guys on the team are doing. So parents are very much a part of that process. You mentioned we can't give full scholarships. We actually can't give any. Whitewater is an NCAA D3 school. So there are no athletic scholarships at Whitewater. But the benefits of Whitewater are the fact that their cost is much lower than what a lot of these schools that can provide athletic scholarship are. In-state, it's only about $14,000, and that includes tuition fees, dorm room, meal plan, books, and laundry. And then your out-of-state cost is only $22,000, $23,000. before any, and that's all before academic scholarships or financial aid. So it's super reasonably priced, even for an out-of-state student, which we've had students come from 14 states other than Wisconsin. So again, that recruiting process, I will say, yes, we are very active in that process, but players are the best recruiters we have. I don't know if you looked at the announcement that we made on our page right before starting the show, but we got a commit out of Rory Clark from Muskego here in Wisconsin. While I think he's been on Rory's list, what actually got him, I think, or at least was part of that decision, was a young man coming out of Massachusetts, Nate Purchase. Those two have gotten to be bowling buddies from bowling different events. There you go. Again, being bowling buddies, they both bowled the PBA event, the PBA youth event in Wauwatosa. And again, when I talked to both of them, they both mentioned the other's names. So I do believe they plan on being roommates next year. But again, just announce that. So again, our players are sometimes our best recruiters because they want their friends to come. And usually good bowlers hang out with other good bowlers. I truly feel that word of mouth piece and the success of the program has been a huge draw. Again, we've made the last 6 ITC championships, and that alone, and being ranked in the top 10 each of those years, truly helps make Whitewater be a destination. People come to Whitewater, A, for the bowling program, but B, once, like the bowling program, I think is what attracts them first to Whitewater. But then once they learn about the academic reputation of the institution, I mean, and again, especially those that aren't from surrounding states, you know, some of these smaller NAIA schools, if you're 10 hours away, 20 hours away, and you go home with a degree, somebody may not know, have never heard of that university. I think we could all look at collegebowling.com rankings and see colleges we would have never heard of had it not been for college bowling. But everybody, no matter where you are, knows the University of Wisconsin. And I always tell them that we are a system, and it's your degree is UW, you're just going to their Whitewater campus. So Ohio State is set up the same way. A lot of states are actually set up in kind of in the same format where the states are a system. So again, that helps solidify that decision for a lot of these students, knowing that they can take their degree back to Massachusetts, West Virginia, California, Alaska, wherever these kids are coming from, and know that it's going to be reputable and people are going to know where they went to school.
Okay.
I think it also helps back in 12 or 2013, where the university did the trifecta, the only school in NCAA history to win football, men's basketball, and baseball all in the same season. So that also helped to put Whitewater on the map. You know, just when they were able to pull off that feat and do that. So again, that has all kind of helped. The fact that we have a women's program, right? That they're NCAA, so they get a little more publicity-wise just because of the notoriety of NCAA. So having a successful women's program actually helps bring in guys as well. One guy we have in the program, Frank Turpo, he's from New York City, Brooklyn area, and his sister bowled collegiately with Leanne. And then Leanne came into coaching. His sister went into coaching out east. And they, you know, Christina was like, "Hey, Leanne, my brother's looking to go to college. We know of Whitewater. Can you give us more information on your men's program?" So she connected me with Frank Turpo. And again, he's here. He's a senior this year. So again, just through the connection of just our women's program, we get guys coming into the program as well.
So when it's good, it's good. You do the recruiting, you convince somebody to come, or one of your guys convinces somebody to come. You get the star bowler, you mold them into a Warhawk, and off you go. Not every recruit stays. On this program, on our episode 5, we had AJ Johnson on. He mentioned that he had visited both Whitewater and Robert Morris. So I guess the question I've been waiting to ask you is, were you a part of either of those visits? And what can you say about how things turned out for him going to McKendree and then the PBA Tour?
So AJ was in his search process right as I came into Whitewater. So I was not there for a visit with him. I had no conversation with him as he was making that decision. I can tell you, competing against him, for him, I think he made the right decision at the time. And all in all, again, the right decision. Dennis Knepper is an amazing coach. He's the head men's coach at McKendree. I have mad respect for Dennis. And then obviously Brian and Shannon now there as well. And I think they came in, I want to say AJ's junior year. Again, they made a show actually against Robert Morris. The year Robert Morris men won their national title. That was the last year. That was in Lincoln, Nebraska. That was the last year we didn't make ITCs. So that would have been 2013, I believe. But AJ had a great career, and he I don't want to say use McKendree to launch a tour, but he had an opportunity to be coached by two of the best. I again think the world of Dennis and Brian. He would have had great coaching at Robert Morris. I think both of them are, again, DJ at Robert Morris on the men's side. Again, could have been great for AJ as well. AJ could have started. I would have loved to have AJ right away. My first 2 years were a little bit of a struggle. Because again, the first year I walked in without doing any recruiting, any conversations. It was just kind of take what's here. The next year got a little bit better as we had a couple kids come out of the Chicago area that I had some conversations with. And then it was really that third year that we really took off, which again was right at that time that AJ was in his sophomore year. So again, I would have loved to have him. I bowl league with him now. We're on the same Monday night league at Fox Bowl. So it's always great to talk to AJ, to chat with him, see how his PBA tour is going. But for him, I think he made the right decision. I also say programs have personalities, and I think he went to the program, certainly when he made his decision, that fit him, right? That McKendree was AJ and AJ was McKendree. And I think players, again, look at that and that process of deciding where to go. It's all about the culture, right? So what are the culture? What's those core values of a program? And AJ went to the fit that was best for him. And again, while I would love to have had him, again, we found success. He's found success. So we're friends, which is great. And again, I'm not one to begrudge anyone who comes for a recruiting visit or comes to practice or reaches out even with an email. There's too many choices today. Like, again, I would not want to be an 18-year-old today trying to make a college decision with bowling involved. There are just way more schools than there was when you or I went to school. And again, our choices were 2 or 3. Some of us won, right? But now players talk to 10, 15 different coaches before making a decision. So now events like Junior Gold have helped that. All these youth tours have kind of helped in this recruiting process. But again, people find that right fit, and that's what's most important. I can tell you, I've had a lot of guys start at Whitewater, but not finish bowling collegiately. In my 10 years, I've only had one player actually leave and go compete somewhere else. One player just wanted to go to Weber, and we made that happen. But the other guys that have left the bowling program, most of them have stayed at Whitewater and still earned their degree. Some have transferred to other schools and just not bowled. But again, there's only been one that has left to go to another school to actually still compete. So to me, I think that says a little bit about our culture, that again, if they leave, it's because college bowling's not for them. And it's not because Whitewater's not a great fit. It's college bowling's not for them. So again, I think we've got a pretty good track record in that respect, as well as graduating players, which is my number one priority.
Sure. In the mix of all this, you guys have a sponsorship from a ball company, from Ebonite. What does that mean for how you do what you do, and what kind of advantage can that give a college player, maybe who hasn't had any kind of sponsorship? I know Storm is doing kind of a thing where they're sponsoring youth players, but who hasn't been exposed to that kind of a partnership.
Right. So I will tell you, we've been on EBI staff for 7 years now. We've been branded through Ebonite. Now we are under the brands of Brunswick with the merger last year. But we're still branded through Ebonite, which for me, I've always said that's the classic brand. And Whitewater, as you kind of mentioned at the start of the show, is a classic name. We have had a bowling program dating back to the start of college bowling, right? Since the early 70s, when college bowling first started, Whitewater's been there. They haven't always been to the stature we are today, but they've always had a bowling program. So having the name Ebonite, again, lends to me some of the credibility of the classic, long-standing tradition. As far as kind of the benefits of the program with that, through this transition to being Brunswick staff, some things have changed a little bit, but our advantages are still great in terms of access to staffers, right? Like I talk regularly with Mike Dole, with Eric Krause, again, several other Brunswick folks, Brian Graham, all these folks that are there to answer questions about product, to help with a demo, or again, the emails that we get kind of talking about the new releases that are coming out. We do get a supply of free equipment every year, which again, we award throughout the year, either through tryouts or strong performances in tournaments. This year, because of kind of the timeline of everything, we're actually going to give some bowling balls out based on GPA. So those guys that excelled in the classroom this fall. We have 6 guys that will be NCBCA scholar athletes, which means they have a cumulative GPA of 3.5 or higher. So again, we're going to award those guys a bowling ball as well. Now, if they're listening, this is the first time they're hearing that as well. So we're doing a lot of breaking news on your show here tonight. If only they're listening, right?
Right.
They'll learn so much. But then again, there's a strong discount program, which for me, being a club program, not being able to provide athletic scholarship and having a dues structure that every player on the team pays, having access to free equipment and significantly discounted equipment is astronomical for the guys. We're actually placing the ball order here tomorrow. And I think I'm at about 40 bowling balls that I'm going to be ordering, which again, guys are ordering 3 and 4 at a time instead of 1 or 2, because of the great discount that we're getting from Brunswick for that sponsorship. Now, one thing sometimes prospective student athletes might see as a negative to the Brunswick family contract is that it's exclusive. So what that means is when we're in a collegiate competition and you're wearing our jersey, which is actually one of our jerseys for this season, hanging up behind me, they have to throw the 7 brands of Brunswick. Now, if they're going out and competing in the tournament you preface the show with, or they're bowling league in Rockford, or a JBST, whatever it might be, a Wisconsin Youth Tour. They can throw whatever they want. I've had a player in the past that was on an individual contract from another company, and Andrew was able to throw those balls in league, in individual tournaments, just not collegiate competition. There you go. You've got our 2 jerseys.
I'm trying to keep pace with you.
The
It's
one
not
on the
easy.
right- The one on the right is one of my personal favorites.
Okay.
This is actually the second time we're doing this jersey. We had the colors flipped. It used to be predominantly black with stripes around the white. This is actually mocked after a Team USA hockey jersey. And we 2018, the year we made our massive run at sectionals, after being the second-ranked team in the nation and being 283 pins back with just 16 Baker games to go, we had on the other version of this jersey. And so I wanted to bring it back, because, again, this generation had not worn that jersey. But also, kind of a cool fact that I learned, one of our freshmen this year, his mom, he's from Colorado, his mom actually works for Team USA Hockey. So I thought, what better year to bring back our hockey replica jersey than the year we have somebody who works for Team USA Hockey. So.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you've built up successes, stacked successes, and you are at the point now where you've had consecutive third place finishes at the ITC. So the question I have then is there a greater feeling of pride that the kind of success you've had is the kind that most teams will never get close to? Or do you have a greater feeling of regret that you got that far and fell a little short?
It's a little bit of both. And I'm leaving Dayton in 2019. We finished 5th. And I remember the van ride very vividly, and the guys like very sulky, right? That we didn't reach the pinnacle we had the 2 years previous. And even those 2 years that we finished 3rd, yes, there's a little bit of regret that says, if we'd have only done this, right? Like, hindsight's always 2020. I watch a lot, again, especially since we've been cooped up in the house since March. I've watched a lot of old bowling shows on YouTube or on Bowl TV, and just been like, man, if only we would have switched these 2 guys in the roster, in the lineup, or maybe made the substitution a little bit quicker, would we have been in the same boat? Could we have gone further? So that bit of regret, I think, is always there. But then a parent had commented, and it wasn't one of our parents, but it was just a fan of our page, commented, well, as you know, only one team leaves happy, right, and excited. And after finishing 3rd 2 years in a row, I will tell you, the first year we finished 3rd was in Baton Rouge. And that, to me, like, I was elated and basically in tears the moment I knew that we were going to medal, regardless of what happened moving forward. That year, we had lost 6 players, 5 of which were traditional starting players. It was the biggest individual loss in one season of varsity players that we'd ever had, but we were actually able to have more success that season than we'd ever had before. We won our first 2 tier 1s, won 1 out east, and then we won in Addison a couple weeks later. So again, medaling that first year, I don't think we had any regret. It was more of the elation that year, because we just got pounded by a really good McKendree team. Both, actually, the last 3 years, 5 of our 6 losses have come from McKendree, which is part of why I have a lot of respect for them, right? Because they've got our number, right? So, but again, the second time in Lincoln that we medaled, I think there was, again, still that super sense of pride that we had the year before. But I can go back and say that match with McKendree in the semifinals, the first game was won by McKendree by 2 pins. The second game was won by them by 1 pin. We tied the third game. 3 games within 3 pins. Really 4 pins, would have been needed in any of those games. So we could have had them 3-0. The second time when we bowled them this in Dayton, there's more regret in Dayton than there is the 2 years that we actually medaled in Baton Rouge and Lincoln, because we actually had McKendree down 3-0 and they came back and swept us. So there's always that sense of pride that again you get from having that success, because each team is new. So for some of those players, that's the best that they've ever done, right? Even finishing 5th in Dayton, I was driving one van home. I had Josh Pate, who was in the front seat. I'm a big stats guy. I like to be one of only kind of people. So I had Josh go back through the last 5 years at that point of ITC championships, and we had finished in the top 5 the last 5 years. All except our first year in Reno, we've been in the top 5. So I had Josh go back and find any other school that had also done that. And the only other school that had done that is McKendree. So only us and McKendree for the last 5 years have finished in the top 5. That was that pride piece that we took away leaving Dayton, is knowing that, again, we've gone 5 years in a row of being in the top 5. Only us and McKendree can actually say that. Now, McKendree's had a better run because they've won 2 titles and made 3 TV shows. But again, our 2 programs are the only ones to be in the top 5. And I think that says a lot for us being a club program. No athletic scholarship, no full-time coach. The kids don't get athletic scholarships. They're paying to be on the team, but we're competing against teams that have everything I just mentioned, right? They have full-time coaches. They're getting scholarships. They're not paying a dime. They're riding on charter buses everywhere they go, right? They get all this kinds of free swag. So again, for us to be competing on an annual basis with these programs was certainly the pride point that I took away from Dayton. And again, really tried to instill in the guys, because they were super upset. We returned we returned 7 from the medal team in Lincoln. We returned 7 of those guys to when we were in Dayton. It's just a different scenario. You're in a different arena. You've got some different faces, so you're not going to always stack up the exact same way. So we find the successes where we can, and we certainly ride those. So again, a good mix of both.
Yeah. You mentioned your guys don't have a full-time coach. You have a job. You have a life in suburban Chicago. We're talking about a 90-minute drive just to get to Whitewater before you start coaching these guys. How is that done when you live in another city?
So thankfully, I've got a very flexible job where I set my schedule. So I usually set my schedule to be there in a traditional year where we have 3 practices. My goal is always 2, if not 3. Sometimes I'm able to make 3. Sometimes I can only make 1. But on average, I'm there twice a week. Again, I've got the most understanding, patient, loving, supportive wife that understands that this is my passion. I've actually been offered other full-time coaching jobs, but the scenario and the timing just weren't right. And again, one was an NCAA program, and then one was back at Robert Morris when they were after Dale left and they were looking for a head coach. To me, it wasn't the right fit at the right time. We were having very strong success here, and I was comfortable. So it's really hard to replicate what you've already done once. And I wanted to, my heart is in this program, which is why, again, I've turned down two full-time coaching gigs. I even talked an NCAA school into offering me dual employment because the coaching gig wouldn't have been enough. But I got them to offer me in writing form an assistant director of athletics role for recruiting to make up that salary difference from what it would have taken for me to go. But just the placement of the program, they wanted it at a satellite campus and not their main campus. For me, it wasn't the right fit. Had it been at the main campus, I might not be sitting here with you today because I may have jumped on it at that time. But knowing that they wanted it at their satellite campus, I knew what I envisioned, like where I had Whitewater, I could not build that NCAA program to. And I wasn't going to walk away from, again, a top 10 nationally ranked program to really build completely from scratch and have to develop over 3 years to get to a competitive spot. I didn't feel, for me, that would be the best fit. So I'm here. As I was telling you earlier, I just moved in September, so I'm not moving again. So I'm going to finish my coaching career here at Whitewater. However long that is, this is year 11, year 14 total. My goal is to get to 20. We'll see what happens. I'm actually at the mercy. This is the advantage but disadvantage of a club program. I'm at the mercy of the team every year. So I have to have the confidence of the team in order to continue coaching. I bring them into the direction of the program. They developed our core values. So again, I don't see this separating anytime soon. So again, I'm actually looking to bring in some other assistant coaches to help continue to elevate the program. Again, my goal is to keep Whitewater in the top 10. I do want to get beyond that semifinals at the ITCs. I want to make a show. Ironically, ITCs last year, 2020, would have been the center that I won my ITC championship in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So it was super heartbreaking to not be able to go to Grand Rapids with the team. Like for me, that's just the story made for TV. Coach who won a title in 2001 in this building, now here as a coach. 18 years later, it was made for TV, but clearly not, because COVID had other plans for us. So,
yeah. So, speaking of COVID, you're starting, to get into this season that, like I said, is like no other. What's it going to look like for you and you guys? I mean, are you going to be separated a pair apart? Are you going to wear masks while you bowl? Is there anything like that the pandemic has kind of forced upon all of us that impacts your team as they dive into this new season?
Yeah, so there's actually a lot that's kind of gonna look different. Number one, for most events, there's going to be no spectators, which is going to be really different to not have that fan base behind you. We've always had a very strong parental following. Ever since I've come to Whitewater, we've had parents at every event. So this spring's going to be very different, not having that support team in the back. It's also going to be nice not to have mom and dad kind of nagging over and, hearing in the background, why is my kid not in, right? It's going to be great to not have that aspect. But again, that fan base drives you, right? Like we are one that gets hype, and not having that fan base could potentially alter our performance a little bit, I think. Number two, yes, masks will be worn the entire time we're in the bowling center. So again, from the time we walk in, throughout their approaches, the entire time in the settee area, we're going to be wearing masks. A lot of tournaments are saying that we're going to have the 5 players that are in the lineup at that point, and the coaches in the bowlers area, and the other 3 will be back on the concourse. So we have a little bit more space. I just ordered 200 travel size bottles of hand sanitizer, um, multiple packs of individual, like 10 packs of wipes to wipe down surfaces. Again, travel's going to be different in the essence that only 2 guys to a hotel room, which they're going to love, no longer have to share a bed, but that affects our budget, right? Now we have to get more rooms. So again, everything kind of comes with a give and take. Then, like you asked about, like, again, how we're going to be structured in the bowling center. Every tournament's doing it a little bit differently. Some are doing it where there's only 1 team on a pair. Some are doing it where there's 2 teams on a pair, but pairs in between. There's a couple tournaments that are going to operate as normal, but just require the masks and the sanitizer. There's going to be less movement for sure. We're not going to be moving pairs every game. We might only move once in a day. Like, I know in conference, our plan is to bowl 3 team games on the same pair with the same team, with pairs open in between, and then move to another pair to bowl 15 Baker games. And once we're on that pair, we won't move. We'll just alternate every game. So again, tournaments are doing it a little bit differently. Everybody has safety at the forefront. Again, it's going to be different. It's going to have different feel. But the important thing is we're giving these student athletes an experience. We are giving them a purpose, and that motivation to excel in the classroom as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's face it, everybody wants, the bowling. If you have to abide by a different set of rules, maybe you have to abide by them, but they're there to be students and they're there to bowl. And I would assume there's, a semblance of pressure on you and everybody in the university to provide that for them, even though we have all this stuff going on.
Right. I actually had to prepare it's called an exception report, because the university policy is no travel. So I had to, with the help of the assistant director of rec sports and then the athletic liaison to the exception committee, we came up with a plan that detailed how we're going to do things differently, keeping safety of the student athlete at the forefront of everything that we do. One other change is we're not going to have team meals. We're not going to have team meetings when we're at tournaments. Dinner is going to be whatever you can grab, either drive through or pick up, and you're going to go eat in your room with your one roommate. We're going to do Zoom team meetings at tournaments. So we'll make sure there's one laptop in every room, and we will do our traditional team meetings that we do every Saturday night at tournaments. We will just do them via Zoom, because again, those meetings are super impactful to recap the way Saturday went and how we need to transition and what we need to do differently going into Sunday to finish the event, and again get a strong finish. So again, there's basically everything except the art of throwing the bowling ball is going to be different. Yeah. Formats are changing. Again, normally at conference, they're 2-day events with 16 games on Saturday and 16 Baker on Sunday. We're having 3 one-day events. Each of those 3 one-day events is going to have 3 team games and 15 Baker, and that's it. So there's still 6 matches every day. It's just, again, a different format. And then we are competing 4 days. It's just over 2 weekends. That last Sunday when we're in Milwaukee, it'll actually be just the conference championship. So we're going to redraw brackets. Every team that competes this year in at least 2 conference events will make the conference championship. So if we end up with 13 teams, we're going to find a way to bracket that out with buys to make sure everybody gets into the bracket. So again, in a world of COVID, we're doing everything we can to provide opportunity for teams to compete.
Sure. But if I remember correctly, the guys who competed last year in that abbreviated, truncated system don't lose eligibility. Is that true for that 1 year?
No. So last year, eligibility eligibility was used because we went through the entire regular season. It's this year, this spring semester, where anybody who competes, it's like it never happened. Like my freshmen this year will still have 4 more years of eligibility. My seniors will still have 1 more year of eligibility. Now, I think only one of my seniors will stick around, that being Frank Turpo, Brandon Mooney, Hunter Loveridge, and my other seniors are going to move on. They're going to graduate with their degree. Brandon will be student teaching in the spring, and as a teacher, he's from Illinois. You don't want to start your master's before you have a teaching job. So it makes no sense for Brandon to stay and compete. I would absolutely love for him to do that, as he was an All-American for us last year. Again, I would love to have him 1 more year, especially because his brother's committed to coming, and I need to balance the two. Brandon's pretty tame and quiet. His brother is not. So hopefully they can balance each other out a little bit. But so yeah, again, it's just a little bit different. So there could be guys and gals who win 5 national championships. Like my freshman this year could, in theory, win 5 ITC championships or be 5-time All-American. I don't think either of those scenarios will happen, as there's only been 13 men in the history of college bowling that have been 4-time All-Americans. I don't see anybody right now being a 5-time.
Yeah.
So,
I got to ask the self-serving question then. If we're talking eligibility, I bowled 3 years, 1 for UW Eau Claire, 2 for UW Milwaukee. Do I have eligibility left? I mean, I'm a middle-aged man, but I could still go back for my master's, right?
As long as you've never had a PBA card and competed under the auspice of the PBA, there's no timeline on your eligibility. Perfect example of this is Nick Hoagland. Nick Hoagland and I competed collegiately, so probably with you at the same time. Nick was a 1 or 2-time All-American into those days. For some reason, he didn't use his 4th year of eligibility. Ironically, when I'm back coaching, Nick bowls his 4th year of eligibility and is a first-team All-American. So, and there was a good gap in there, probably 4 or 5 years in between my collegiate days and when I got into coaching the first time. So, yeah, absolutely. As long as you've never had a PBA card, you can join.
Let me tell you, I have never had a PBA card. So,
okay, me neither. Never will.
To all college coaches that are watching this, look at what you've got here. A middle-aged man, out of shape. I have 2 adjustments. I throw the ball harder or turn it more. And I'm from Wisconsin. What do you think?
There you go. You do. Just, go to the closest UW to you. They will be glad to have you. No, I'm just, come on down to Whitewater. I don't know where you're at permanently, but.
You're going to have to talk to my wife about that. And let me tell you, that would be a tough sell.
Yeah. Well, you can do the classes online for the masters. It'd just be getting you to practice. That would be the issue.
We'll talk offline. We'll figure this out. All right, let's move on to our foundation frame, which I know we actually have a few comments here. Super Nintendo Bros says that shirt is fire. I'm hoping he's talking about mine, because he's a former coworker at a TV station here in Eau Claire, Raji Alawardi, who runs a YouTube channel, Super Nintendo Bros, as well as a Twitch page. And if anybody out there is into video gaming, check it out. It's awesome. Drake,
I'll have to have
is that one of your guys? The GOAT?
He's trying to earn brownie points. It is. It's one of my guys. He's trying to earn brownie points. He's a good kid. I really like Drake. So Drake's actually a funny recruiting story. Most of it, and this is one thing students need to understand in high school, most recruiting happens when you reach out to a coach. that is probably 95% of all recruiting, is you making that first pitch. Drake passed the eye test in Dallas at Junior Gold back in 2017, 2018, whatever year it was in Dallas. Talked to him there. Again, much conversation back and forth. We scheduled a visit. He was looking at physical therapy. So I got him set up with folks at Whitewater that could talk to him about our pre-PT program. Get all set. He messages me 2 or 3 days before and says, you know what? The school up here in Michigan where I'm from says I can do nursing and it'll get me where I need to go. I'm just going to go here. I kid you not, at that point, which Drake is a phenomenal player. I'm so glad he's at Whitewater, but I've never trash talked a 17-year-old as much as I did Drake at that moment in time. I literally, and he can attest to it, his stepmom can attest to it, absolutely laid into him that the school that he chose, number one, lied to him about the academic opportunity to go into nursing directly into PT school. The prerequisites are entirely different. So I, again, had to kind of run through that with Drake, but then talked about the match component. And I knew that Drake was a competitor. I knew what his goals were, and the school that he was looking at did not match what his competitive outlook and goals were. So again, I kind of trash talked this 17-year-old. Had never done that before, will likely never do it again. A couple days later, he sends me a message and says, hey, my dad wants to talk to you. My heart jumped out and I'm like, oh my God, this dad is going to destroy me for going off on his kid. And truthfully, just being honest with him. Lo and behold, the dad just kind of wanted to make sure everything that I told him was true. They came for a visit. I got the cold shoulder, what I thought was the cold shoulder from his stepmom, but found out she was a nurse and worked midnights, literally got off work and drove the 5-6 hours to Whitewater for the visit. So she was just really tired. But again, I'd never trash talk a 17-year-old, but Drake, he came to Whitewater. He had a phenomenal freshman year. He was actually our conference rookie of the year, which I don't know if you saw on the website, but now we're actually naming like two all conference teams, a rookie of the year and a conference player of the year. Drake was our conference rookie of the year. He was our team rookie of the year as well. So I've got very high expectations for Drake this shortened season.
Man, I tell you, you are holding me together. Power issues, connection issues. It's duct tape and paper clips over here, but man, you're really holding it together. Drake also wanted to thank you for the news, and I do as well, because that's awesome to break new little nuggets on this program. So let's move on to our off the sheet challenge, which, if you've seen previous episodes, we ask our guests to challenge somebody else who they think would be good on this program. Hopefully I can stay online for the duration of those shows, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But let me ask you, Shawn, who do you think would be good on this program that you'd like to challenge tonight?
So I want to throw out a challenge to what I can now say is a friend of mine. 5 or 6 years ago, probably couldn't have used that word. And I'm sure she will convey some more stories here. But Katie Zwiefelhofer, she is a Whitewater alum. She is also now the head coach at Carthage College. They've had a program, been a part of conference for years, but they started actually an NCAA women's program. And hired Katie as their first ever coach. And this season is slated to be their inaugural season. Honestly, I haven't talked to her, so I don't know if they're competing in this shortened spring semester or if they're going to just wait and kind of launch in fall of 2021. But I would certainly love to have her come on, talk about her experience. She was actually I'm an NCAA D2, D3 Player of the Year. She finished third 2 years at the NCAA Championships. She's helped coach at Whitewater and now is doing her own gig at Carthage. So I would love to give her some time on here with you, and she can talk a little bit more about her success as a student athlete, and then also again kind of help promote her program and talk about some NCAA things which are different than on the USBC or club side.
Yeah, absolutely. We would love to have her on. Katie, if you're watching this on replay or live, let me know. We'd love to book you for a future episode and go from there. Shawn Wochner, I really appreciate the time. Best of luck to you and your team in what really has no choice but to be a memorable season until you match up against UW-Eau Claire or UW-Milwaukee.
Correct. Well, thank you again very much for the opportunity to come on and share a little bit about myself and a little bit about our Whitewater program as well as conference too. That's one thing I always like to talk about it at like the high school tournament, is if Whitewater is not a good fit, most of the UW schools have programs, and I would love for Wisconsin kids to stay in Wisconsin, because when students usually leave for college, they're less likely to return back home. So for all the bowling centers in Wisconsin, for them to continue to grow and be prosperous, I would love for Wisconsin kids to stay at home. You know, we're lucky enough to be getting 3 guys right now out of Wisconsin. So that's great. But there's far more graduating this year. Hopefully, if they're wanting to continue, they look at the UW schools, Viterbo, Carthage, Milwaukee School of Engineering, Blackhawk Area Technical College is starting a program. So all these schools in the state of Wisconsin have programs. Get involved, continue your experience. You don't have to be, like, again, Whitewater is a different level because we're a top 10 program, but there's a program out there for every skill level in the state of Wisconsin. If you're just a social bowler and just want to go have fun, there's UW teams or other schools in the state that you can still walk onto and compete with. But if you're that upper echelon, like a Rory or a Tyler Haugen out of Sun Prairie, 2 guys that we've got coming to Whitewater next year, both phenomenal standout youth players. Again, Whitewater is a good fit for a lot of students, but I understand not for everyone. So again, find your fit, just stay involved with collegiate bowling. And he froze on me again, it looks like. So we're gonna, I guess, kind of just send this out with that message again. Continue, hopefully everybody goes on and checks out college bowling. We will, hopefully he can throw up in the chat or on the live stream the website he showed for the collegiate conference that does have all of the contact information for those folks that are either the head coach or the player representative. Reach out to those folks, to us. Let us help you in that transition to college bowling. And now it is truly my own show. So again, thank you everybody for tuning in again, either live or in watching the archive. Hopefully you've gained something from this. If you have questions and want to learn more about Whitewater specifically, you can visit our website, which is uwmensbowling.weebly.com. You can check us out on Facebook at Warhawks Bowling or on Twitter at Warhawks Bowling. You can also email me direct at wocners@uww.edu. Would love to chat with any of you about college bowling, even if it's not Whitewater. Again, my goal is always just to help people find the right fit. And you're back. We're still here. I've given out all my personal information.
Yeah, we'll do this every week.
And we were worried about my connection. Correct.
Yeah, a whole host of issues that we're dealing with on this end, but I'm glad somehow, some way, it worked out. Shawn Wochner, thanks again for joining us. Really appreciate it. Great conversation and great stories.
All right. Well, thank you again. Have a good night, everyone.
Yep, you too. Wow. That was that was one of the more interesting episodes we've ever had here. But thank you for joining. It's our last of the year, and our next live stream is Wednesday, January 6th. Wow, some great memories from college bowling and beyond from that one, and really appreciate Shawn's time. Remember, we've got a Facebook group. It's Bowling with the Fef on Facebook. It's a private group at this point, but we've had some, I guess, some kind of hints, requests to turn it public. I'm wondering what you think. If you have thoughts on that, either way, let me know. bowlingwiththefef@yahoo.com is the place to find me. Our next live stream is scheduled for Wednesday, January 6th, 6 p.m. Central, right here on the YouTube channel. Until then, have a happy and healthy new year. Be just and fear not, and hope to see you on the next show.